another day, it's another graveyard. We've come away from Ypres, further down the front line to a place called Mons, and specifically to Symphorien cemetery, which is very interesting for a number of reasons that I'm now going to show you. Mons was the scene of the first real battles of the First World War. This is where the British were dug in and the Germans attacked and pushed the British back almost all the way to Paris. Well, the British and the Allies. I say British, you know what I mean. So this area was in German hands for virtually the whole war until 1918. And what they did was they wanted a cemetery for the German and the, quote, English, unquote, fallen. And a local landowner said, you can have this bit of ground as long as you treat the two sides equally, as long as the Germans and the Allies are given sort of equal status. This is a really rare graveyard because the Germans and the Commonwealth forces are buried side by side. And obviously, when this was inaugurated, the war was going to be over by Christmas, so they didn't need a lot of space. It is a really, really beautiful place. It's been set out like a sort of arboretum with lots of trees and lots of plants, and it was maintained by the Germans for the whole duration of the First World War. And at the end of the war, it was taken over, and obviously we won, so the place was remodelled a little bit to make it a bit more airy. And of course, they had to add the Cross of Sacrifice. So over there you have the British or the Commonwealth Cross of Sacrifice. And next to it, that obelisk is dedicated to the men of both sides. It's dedicated to the Germans and, quote, the English, unquote. So the First World War started here, and then the front line moved. The Germans pushed forward. The front line moved up to Ypres, where we just were. But then the counterattack at the end of the war, front line pushed back. And guess where it ended up? Here. The war finished exactly where it started. And nowhere is that more sort of clearly indicated than the fact that this is Private Parr. He was a cycle messenger and he went missing on the first day of hostilities. So he is reputed to be the first British serviceman killed in the First World War. That was the very, very first of quite a few. And you want to know where the last British serviceman killed in the First World War is buried? There. This is Private Ellison, and he died just before the guns fell silent. So these two graves are literally Private Ellison, Private Parr. They're facing each other, and that's apparently by pure chance. So most of these graves along here are from 1914, when the Germans were very much in the ascendancy. And along that side, they're mostly 1918, which is when the Allies finally pushed back and got back as far as Mons, where it all started. Yeah, and one of the three regiments that defended Mons in the very early days of the war were the Royal Irish. So that's why the word English on the monument up there is, probably a bit sticking in the throat for all the Irish people that are in here. And these little stones here are the German stones. It's unusual to see Germans with their own headstones, as we've seen before. Usually they are lying down, or the odd sort of little one that's snuck into a British or Allied cemetery. But here, this was a German military cemetery, one of the few that wasn't stripped apart and moved somewhere else at the end of the war. That's probably because there's German bodies here and also Allied. It is such a nice and very, very peaceful place. It was all inaugurated, as I said, by the Germans, and there was local dignitaries, and the German High Command came here when this place was opened. It was supposed to be a showpiece centre of remembrance for the First World War, even while the First World War was still in its very early days. This was going to be where people would come on a pilgrimage. The wee German graves also have the people's hometowns on it. So there's Graffiter Karl Kark from Kiel and Graffiter Wilhelm Hansen from Kiel, and they were all from 1914. It's all so prettily laid out. It's laid out more like a garden than a graveyard, because here we have a little square of Allied graves. These are men mostly of the Royal Irish, I think, from the last time. Yeah, Royal Irish Regiment, 1914, all the way along there. A lieutenant from the Middlesex Regiment, again at 1914. So you've got this little square up here, which is quite pretty. And then down there, look at that. How cool is that? It's just a little circle of gravestones with a nice obelisky thing in the middle. And on the little obelisky thing in the middle, it says, here repose 45 English soldiers of the Royal Middlesex Regiment. Remember, that was put up by the Germans. And if you look around these stones around that little circle, most of them are buried near this spot, so the bodies are not actually where the gravestones are, but it is a really, really nice wee setting. It's such a nice place, as I keep saying. If you come to Belgium, most people just go to Ypres and that's it. That is their experience of World War I Belgium. You should really come here. Mons itself is not really worth a visit, but Symphorien is amazing. And another little addition here, this is the memory of 4 soldiers of the British Empire who died in 1914 as prisoners of war, and were buried at the time in Oberg churchyard, which won't be far away, but whose graves are now lost. So these guys were captured at the Battle of Mons and then died in German custody. And then there's the men who are believed to be buried in this cemetery, but it's not absolutely sure. Those 5 there are all from the Royal Irish Regiment, again from the defence of Mons in 1914. Down in front of us, the Commonwealth War Grave guys are hard at work keeping the place looking spick and span. Lest we forget, from the 4th of August 2014, so that was the centenary of the start of the First World War. So we're going to go up these stairs now, and I'm going to probably not gibber, but certainly waffle a bit as we head up to the highest point for a wee look around. And this is where the obelisk is the sort of centrepiece of the graveyard is. So this was put up by the Germans when the cemetery was first opened, and then over there the cross of sacrifice was added after the war when the place was sort of tidied up a bit and reorganised. A lot of trees were taken down to make it more like an English country garden, apparently. Lots more German graves down here. Apparently another thing that happened when the place was tidied up at the end of the war is a lot of the British markers were just crosses, and they were all replaced with the standard Commonwealth War Graves white limestone headstone. In this little bit up on top of the hill it says, "Here repose 53 English soldiers of the Royal Fusiliers and the Royal Irish Regiment." Yeah, Royal Irish guys again. Yeah, I've said that before, I'm not going to keep repeating myself. But from up here, look at the view you've got. There's the cross of sacrifice, and beyond that there's the German obelisk. This is such a nice wee place.